Yeah, this class, students, I wish to start another poem in the unit. I think it is unit 2, and I wish to start another poem, that is another metaphysical poem by Andrew Marvell, that is To His Coy Mistress. Before I will give you a brief introduction and Andrew Marvell's place as a poet in the metaphysical, among the metaphysical poets, and in general in the English poetry in another class. Now I wish to, because you are also here, I wish to deal with the text first. Um, Actually, this poem will be in three stanzas, which are not having equal lines. Yet, these three stanzas we can take as three parts also. And this is obviously a love poem. Okay. Mm, if you see the poems of Donne, he will be actually shifting from platonic love to the physical love, etc. But Marvell's poem, actually, To His Coy Mistress, is literal. Even if you read also literally, it is like persuading the beloved to what do you say, consummate the love. Okay, that is what is there in this poem. And for that, as it is the characteristic of metaphysical poets, we can see that here in these lines, if you read, we have the poet taking comparisons from the far-fetched areas, which we call as metaphysical conceit. Okay, and also this exhibits the knowledge of the poets also, the because it is the characteristic of metaphysical poets. And according to the tradition of metaphysical poetry or characteristics of metaphysical poetry, Marvell also, of course, um, keeps on providing the examples of, from different places, and also clever comparisons, and the beginning also, as we have seen the beginning of Donne's canonization, where it is very dramatic, or we call it as an abrupt beginning. Okay, and in the similar manner in this poem, To His Coy Mistress also, we will see to some extent that kind of dramatic quality. Of course, the presence of the beloved is always felt in every line, yet we won't hear from the beloved or the listener. The speaker only will be presenting, and all of a sudden the argument starts. It is like argument, a kind of argument is there. Okay, which is called as syllogism. It is you know um, a concept in philosophy, in philosophy and logic. We'll come to that in the further analysis of the poem, but now let us see literal analysis of the poem, we will see. And one more thing that is present here is the theme of carpe diem. Carpe diem is seize the present. Seize the present. Actually, this is the theme in Donne's poetry also. Donne wants to live in the present. That is what I think in here in the introductory lines that I have given you for Donne, I have mentioned that. So here Marvell also is presenting the theme of what you call seize the present, carpe diem theme only. So simply to say the title, as it reveals, To His Coy Mistress. I hope you know the meaning of coyness, or coy is being shy. So there is a mistress who is feeling shy, and now the lover is trying to persuade her to listen to his words or to come along with him to celebrate their love. That is what as the title reveals is the poem. So to his coy mistress, he is talking to his coy mistress who is very shy. Perhaps out of shyness she is not opening her mouth, and we see the lover only is talking. Okay, so I hope one of you can read on 2 lines or 4 lines. Any one of you, please make it fast.
Starting onwards, ma'am.
Yeah.
Had we but world enough and time, this coyness lady were no crime.
Mm.
We would sit down and think which way to talk and pass our long love's day.
Yeah. Had we but world enough and time. So see here in the beginning itself, he is addressing to his coy mistress. Maybe it is in an indirect manner, and telling her that please don't be coy. So why she should not be coy? He says that we don't have enough time. We don't have, but had we but old enough and time, this coyness lady were no crime. He says that whatever time we have is very limited. See here, the transient nature of human life is also in the background of the poem. So the lover perhaps is considering the shortness of human life, and within the short human life, if we think our youth or our the stage of being youth or young is also very short. So perhaps considering all the short things or the transient nature of life and also the shortness of young times or youth, he says that if we have world enough time. So this world enough time means if we have a time immortal. If you think that our life is not mortal, if you think that the life is not short, or if you think that our youth is not short, if at all we have that much of time, the world enough time. So this world, this universe is very big, you know that. And so if we have that much of time, okay, a big time, okay, that is to say that whatever we have is very short. So if we have that much time, and if you are sitting coyly, of course it is no crime. That is what you say. But in other words, it means what? Because our time is short, your coyness is a crime. In other words, he is telling that your coyness is a crime because we have very short time. And if at all we are having enough time in our hands, what we will do? We would sit down and think which way to walk and pass our long love's day. So it is not a single day, but he is saying that loving each other, sitting away from one another, we can of course spend a long time. Okay, if when can we do that? If we have world enough time. But now our time is not like that. We are having very short time only. So if you think that we have that much of time, we will happily sit down and just ponder about our life. Lazily we can spend time if at all we have world enough time. Okay, we can just sit together or walk and just pass our long love's day. So you say, and that is to say that we can keep on loving as long as we want without consummating the love. This is the meaning here in the backdrop. So he says that if we have enough time in our hands, we can, as you are feeling coy, and till you leave your coyness, we can very well sit or walk and pass our long love's day. So I hope you got the point. This is all the lover's intention to persuade or to impress the beloved that whatever time we have is very short. Yet he is not trying to find fault with her coyness directly. Rather, he is trying to impress her, saying that if at all we have well enough time, of course we will do as you want, and of course you can sit coyly as long as you want, but that is not how time, but we don't have in the backdrop. He means to say that we don't have enough time. Yeah, next someone can continue. Who's there?
Though
Continue reading.
thou by the Indian Ganges side
Ah,
shouldst rubies find,
ah,
I by the tide of Humber would complain.
mm,
I would love you 10 years before the flood,
mm,
and you should, if you
mm,
please,
mm.
refuse till the conversation of the Jews.
Conversion of the Jews. Yeah, he says that if at all we have enough time, what can we do? You can just sit coyly, or we can just walk and pass our time and our long love's day, long love journey. And where can you sit? Thou by the Indian Ganges side. See, this is a metaphysical feature. Indian Ganges. I told you that 17th century is a century in which England started exploration. Okay, exploring the other continents, maybe for colonization, for trade, or whatever it is. That is the time when a spirit of exploration, and the spirit of exploration is presented in the metaphysical poems also. And now, actually, Andrew Marvell is believed to be born in Hull, the district of Hull, where the Humber River flows. Okay, so he says that if at all we have time, you can just go. In those days, coming to India, the Indian Ganges is a very big matter. We may have to spend months on voyage. It is not like today, as we go by aeroplanes, etc. But then it is by voyage. It takes months together, and then rubies find, of course, precious gems. Rubies are precious gems. That means to find rubies, you have to spend much time. So you can just go to India. India is place of rubies and jewels, etc., all precious stones, and that is what they have taken away after, while going, giving us independence. They have taken away the Kohinoor diamond and all other gems, etc. So here he is saying that if we have time, you can very well go to India, the Ganges, the famous river, and then you can seek rubies there. And now, what I can do, I can, by the tide of Humber, would complain. I will sit here on the side of Humber and then just complaining, in the sense, not complaining in the meaning what we take today, but it is like pining for the lover. Of course, I can wait for your return. That is what he says. So if you go to the Indian Ganges, and if you want, you can seek rubies. It takes much time, but whatever time it takes, if we have time, I will very much wait on the tide of the Humber and just waiting for you or thinking of you. So I would love you 10 years before the flood. See, this is actually a biblical reference. You know the great flood of Noah. Okay, when Noah built the ark. I hope many of you know, or it is for others who don't know the Christian mythology. It's so believed in the Bible. It is stated that the God created this world and people are living, and people are not listening to the word of God. Okay, and they are going astray. They are living life as they wish. They are not living as per the will of God, yet they are doing all sorts of things. So God felt bad for creating all this, and he became angry, and he thinks that he will annihilate all of them. He will remove all of them from the earth, and there is only one family, that is the family of Noah. Okay, and God appears to Noah, and he asks him to build a big ark that is called as Noah's Ark. Okay, a big ship, and then he orders that you should bring each species, male and female, into the ark, bird, animal, or what do you say, animals in water, earth, whatever it is, all kinds of creation, each male and female should be brought and kept in the ark. And when I tell you, you and your family should also go into the ark, then he says that I am going to downpour, create a downpour on the earth, that is for 40 days and 40 nights. And then what happens? The ark starts floating on the water. So that means what? The whole world, or the whole earth is inundated. Okay, so it is the flood, great flood. This means what? He brings here to say that, this is a million years ago. We don't know when it has happened. So if we have time, I don't have any objection to love you for millions of years. Okay, that is for the beginning. For the flood, actually, is considered to be at the very beginning of the creation. So he says that from there, and you should, if you please, refuse till the conversion of the Jews. The Christian students here should tell me whether Jews converted or not. The Christian students are there. Whether Jews converted or not.
No, ma'am, they did not convert.
Yeah, that means what? Why he is using them? I have no objection to love you from the flood. That means millions of years, if time permits, if life is immortal for us, I have no objection to love you for millions of years, and you can go on refusing till the conversion of the Jews, means it will never happen. Till now it did not happen. So that is, it is in the future, a remote future. From the remote past to the remote future, he says that we can love. So he says that I don't have any objection for that. But what he says that, when it will happen, you can be on the Ganges side, I can be on this tide of Humber, and I can love you from the flood, and you can keep on refusing till the conversion of the Jews. Jews did not convert because Jews still believe that Messiah did not come. They don't accept Jesus as Messiah. According to Christian mythology, Jesus is the Messiah. But Judaism is different. They have a different religion. Though they accept in the Almighty God, they don't accept Jesus as the Son of God, and they still think that Messiah has to come. So the conversion of Jews did not happen till now. So the remote past to the remote future, billions of years, this way and that way, I don't have any objection to keep on loving you. This is an exaggerated statement. This is a hyperbole. Okay, as we have seen in the canonization, all the metaphysical characteristics, poetry characteristics are visible here. So how hyperbolic? Of course, human life is transient. At the most, we may live, say 100 years or 80 or 90, whatever. But see how he is imagining ages together, and he is stating that if at all we have this much time, I don't have any objection of keep on loving you, and you can keep on refusing me, and you can be coy as long as you want. So this is the hyperbole, as we have already seen in the first. This is the first stanza, wherein we have a kind of argument presented. Okay, this to that analysis will come later in the next class. But here you can see how cleverly the lover is trying to seduce or persuade the beloved, stating that your coyness is a crime. Okay, your coyness is a crime because we don't have enough time. Though he says that this coyness lady were no crime when it was not a crime if we have time, but now we don't have time, so it is crime only. So let us proceed to the next stanza till the conversion of Jews. That line is over. Yeah, another one can read it. Is it visible to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, someone has come to join. Let me see. I will admit. Yeah. Some now someone else can read the lines now.
Vaster than empires and more slow, and 100 years should go to praise
Mm.
thine eyes, and on thy forehead gaze,
Mm.
200 to adore each breast. But
Forehead gaze.
200 to adore each breast, but 30,000 to the rest.
Uh, Actually, till the conversion of Jews, and one more line is there, no? My vegetable love should grow vaster than empires and more slow. You left that line? Who
No,
read
ma'am.
this?
Satya, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. Anyhow, let us continue. So, he stated that if we have time, actually, what happens? If you have time, you can be on one side, I can be on the other side of space and time also, and then we can keep on loving and you can keep on being coy. Now he says, my vegetable love should grow, and this is actually vegetable love in the sense, there are many research articles also, what is this vegetable love. Perhaps it is only to show that it is lively or organic, etc. And he says it grows vaster than empires and more slow. So, because if we have time, of millions of years of time, and the whole world for us, of course, I can keep on loving you slowly so that my love will grow, keep on growing vaster than empires. Usually, if someone asks you how much you love me, we say this much or this much, like that. So, here also, the speaker of the poem is saying that if you wish that we can love for such a long time, if we have, I don't have any objection to keep on loving you, and my love is real, okay, lively, and it will grow vaster than empires, more slowly, gradually, and 100 years should go to praise thine eyes. So if I have time, what will I do? He is saying that I will keep on praising you, praising different parts of the body. So he says, for 100 years, I will keep on praising your eyes, and on thy forehead gaze 200. So I will keep on looking at your forehead, say for 200 years, and adore each breast, but 30,000 to the rest. Say, he says that I will another 200 years I'll be adoring each breast, and then for the rest of the body it is 30,000. See, this is hyperbolic, as I told you, exaggerated, because it is accounting for so many thousands of years, okay, for which the human being cannot live. So this is the time of immortality. He is visualizing that if at all we are not mortals, if at all we are not like a regular man and women, and if we have the power of being in the remote past and existing for the remote future, I don't have any objection of keep on praising you, loving you slowly, so that my love grows like an empire, and then I keep on adoring your body okay, different parts of your body. And he says an age at least to every part, he says. So he says 100 years for eyes, and 200 years forehead, and then 200 years for each breast, and then 30,000 for the rest. And he says at least an age for every part. Age, say 1,000 years we may take as an age, okay, etc. So he says like that we take. And the last age should show your heart. So lastly, after praising, or after what do you say, looking after you in all your body parts, etc., physical, at last I will just want to see your heart. And the last age should show your heart. So of course that means showing your heart literally is showing her love, perhaps. Okay. So here you can see, take another thing also. Usually we have this concept of love at first sight. Okay. And love at first sight, how it appears? Is it the physical attraction or what? We have to ponder into that. And then he says that after the people being together, and then if they go on living together, they will slowly realize what is the heart of the other person. So perhaps he is referring to that. Or in other words, you can take that he might be saying that after I love you for ages, you may show your consent. Okay. And then, and continuing, he says that show your heart, for lady, you deserve this state, nor would I love at lower rate. So he says that, of course, you are so beautiful and you deserve this also. Deserve this state. What state? The state of being praised for ages together. Okay. And then making me to wait for ages for your love, or to show your heart. Of course, you deserve that. And nor would I love at lower rate. And he says, don't think that I will stop loving you, or my love is also, he says that it is at the higher rate only. It is not a lower rate. So this is how he says that if we have world enough time, I can do like this. I can just be praising you. I can be with you and wait until you give consent. And I will endure your coyness. Then the next thing he says, but at my back, I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near. See how, no, if we have world enough time, we can love like that, as I have explained till now, as I have stated till now, the speaker is telling. But what is happening? At my back, I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near. See, I told you once that the birth and the death of human beings are together only. But we human beings always, think of death at a remote future. But that is like our shadow. We don't know when it comes. So like that, here he is saying that if I have enough time, I will love you like this. But what is happening in the reality? At my back, I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near. With the time, with the passage of time, what happens? Our youth vanishes, our beauty disappears, okay? And of course, we may not live also. So that is why the time is compared to a winged chariot here. And a winged chariot, of course, flies with a lightning speed. Okay. So he says that time, of course, approaches, hurries, very hurriedly it comes. So we can't sit at leisure in coyness. That is what he means, in other words. So he says, if we have time, I don't have any objection to love you like that. But what is happening in the reality? Time's winged chariot is coming near. And And yonder, all before us lie deserts of vast eternity. See here, the comparison is very impressive. And here he says that what is happening when the time is approaching? Before us, what is lying? Deserts of vast eternity. This is a very paradoxical statement. You know, eternity, we always believe that that is the blissful state. But here, the speaker of the poem or marvel, the poet says that it is desert. Desert of vast eternity. How, why it is a desert? Even though it is eternity, perhaps the Christian belief we have to ponder here. When you go to heaven, there is no lover and beloved, etc. In the heaven, all are like angels. They don't have any, what you call, gender also. Okay, so there is no concept of love, lust, etc., anything, coyness, etc. So what is he saying? That yonder, all before us lie. So if you just look back and see the time winged chariot hurrying to us, because time passes something like that. So sometimes we also feel like that, no? We think that oh, these many years have passed after I have come here, or I have born. Okay, so when you celebrate your birthday, when you count your age also, you may feel like that. So time is something, that is why we say time and tide waits for none. So like that, we know that time will not stop. And because we know that time will not stop, what is there before us? Yonder means there. No, yonder. What is there? Deserts of vast eternity. Of course, eternity is vast. There is no end at all. Yet he thinks that it is of no use. The eternity is of no use because the consummation cannot take place in the eternity. That is why he says, students, hope all of you are able to follow me. Are you able to
Yes,
follow?
ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Any doubts till now? Any doubts till now?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No, ma'am.
Yeah. We'll proceed. So he says, the deserts of eternity, what happens? Thy beauty shall no more be found. So this is physical beauty. See, with the passage of time, what happens? Of course, change occurs. Okay, and the change occurs not only in years, it is not in the number of years, but yeah, of course you now are majors. Now if you look at your teens, your photographs also, you may feel that, oh, this much I have changed. Okay, whether it is beautiful or not, whether it is not to say that teenage is beautiful and now you are not beautiful like that, but of course a change comes. And here the speaker is talking about the beauty, because he is purely talking about the physical love, the worldly love. So he says that thy beauty shall no more be found. In the vast eternity, beauty is of no use. It will not be found. Nor in thy marble vault shall sound my echoing song. What is this marble vault? This is the tomb. Okay, he says that when time is approaching us, when we become old and die, of course, we will go into the tomb only. People will bury us. And in that tomb, you cannot listen to my song. This is the song, the speaker says. But once the time comes and when we die and when we are into the tombs, you cannot listen my song. Then worms shall try that long preserved virginity. So you are trying to preserve your virginity. So very witty comparison where he says that if you are not letting me to try your virginity, you are preserving it for what? for worms only, because we are dust and unto the dust we go, and there when buried, of course worms will be eat your flesh. Okay, that is what happens. And this is the naked reality wherein the speaker is putting, and he is saying that you will be giving your virginity to the worms if you are not able to remove the coyness now, and your quaint honor turn to dust. See, being a virgin is honor. Okay, virgins, chastity, etc. This topic actually we have discussed during Wife of Bath's Tale also. So at those times, and of course even in the 17th century, women are considered for their virginity and chastity, and it is considered as the honor for women. So your quaint on turns to dust. So what happens to your honor? Now you wanted to be a virgin and you wanted to have honor in the society, but what happens to that once you die? It goes to the dust only. And into ashes all my lust. So he says, the lover says that I have the desire of physical desire, having love with you, and your honor goes to dust, and all my lust will go into the ashes. That means again dust only. So the grave is a fine and private place, but none, I think, do their embrace. See how finely he says that he is trying the beloved to embrace him, or letting the lover to embrace the beloved. So this coyness is between them, and he says that when we die, of course, when we are in the tomb or grave, it is a very fine and private place, of course, but none, I think, do their embrace. So they cannot happen. Embracing one another, will be happening when we are alive only. So in other words, he is trying to impress his beloved that when we are alive and when we are young only, we have to celebrate our love. So that is why he says, when you die, your beauty dies and your virginity goes, even our honor also goes to dust, and then my lust or my love also will go into the ashes. And though we have all privacy that we need in the graves, okay, but there we can't embrace. It's very paradoxical. And then he says, none, I think, do their embrace. So though we have the privacy, much privacy that we want in the grave, we can't embrace there. So that is, in other words, lovers of course usually long to have privacy. And ironically, he's saying that whatever privacy we need or we want, we may get after going into the graves. But what is the use of that? He says that it is of no use. Okay. Now, therefore, while the youthful hue sits on the skin like morning dew. See, they actually here he is telling one thing, that is, here he is saying, till now we have seen that two parts. Actually, if we have time, what I will do. But he says we don't have time. Because we don't have time, what is going to happen? Our youth will wither, our life will wither, we'll go into the tombs, and there we won't embrace. We can't celebrate our love. That is why now itself he is saying, while the youthful hue sits on thy skin like morning dew. See, freshness. In youth, we are all fresh. And after the youth, of course, we will lose our color. We will lose our freshness. So like the morning freshness, the youth is fresh in all the stages of our human life. He says that this is, in other words, these two lines mean that when we are still young and fresh, what is he asking? And while thy willing soul transpires at every pore with instant fires. So while your heart is burning, okay, burning with passion, Okay, of course, he says that your soul might be willing, but perhaps you are thinking about the honor of a virgin or chastity of a virgin. So he says, when you are young and while your heart is filled with passion, that is instant fire. Actually, passion in love is compared to fire. This is what we have seen in canonization also. So while your heart is burning with passion, now let us sport as while we may. Now let us sport while we may. And now, like amorous birds of prey, rather at once our time devour than languish in his slow chopped power. So he says, when time is there and when youth is there, when our hearts are burning with passion, he is inviting the lady to play the sport of love. Okay, and now he is saying that like amorous birds in love making, like them, like the birds. Those birds actually they will devour the time at once immediately. But what he is telling, let us not make love in haste, but let us roll our time. So spend our time, slowly let us spend our time. Let us roll all our strength and all our sweetness up into one ball. So this is like, two bodies becoming one and two souls becoming one. And he is here literally describing how they, if the lady permits, how they will enjoy their togetherness and tear our pleasures with rough strife through the iron gates of life. Thus though we can't make our sun stand still, yet we will make him run. See here, he says that now let us celebrate our love and let us roll ourselves like one ball and have our pleasures with rough strife, and then through the iron gates of life. There's the what are these iron gates, we don't know. Perhaps he is referring to some traditions, customs, etc., which of course may not allow this beloved to leave the coyness and be with him one. Or it is like in life it is a great moment that we have to cross this moment and enter and enjoy in that. And he says that though we come together also, even after we come together also, we cannot make our sun stand still. So he says that the sun is the sun shining on the sky, and even after we come together, he may not wait for us. Even before we come together also, he may not wait for us. That is what he stated. Even after we come together and even we are celebrating our love, okay, and pleasure, having our own pleasures. These are all literally the pleasures of body. And then he says, though while having those pleasures, we cannot make the sun to stand still. That means we can't stop the day, we can't stop the time, yet we will make him run. That means what? When we are doing something, immersed in it, you can't notice that. So that is what he says. Though we can't make the sun to stand for us or to wait for us, because we can't stop even if we wish to, even a day or a night. A day, after day comes night and night comes day. And this process of nature cannot be stopped. And that is what he is saying, that even in love we cannot stop. Even without love also we cannot stop. So he is saying that now let us make him run. Let the time pass. That means what? Let us be immersed in the game of love. That is what he says. And literally, this is the analysis of To His Coy Mistress, a purely love, celebration of love by Andrew Marvell. For a lady who is having coyness, he is trying to persuade her with what do you say, logical arguments. Okay, logical arguments wherein the beloved has to give in, because whatever he is arguing is true. So this is what I have to share. If you have any doubts, you can just interact. I hope you have all followed the poem.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, any doubts? Yeah, further I will explain one more class, or one or two more I'll be taking to give you some lines about the greatness of Andrew Marvell as a metaphysical poet, and also what are the themes of, and what are the, how this poem is analyzed, syllogism that is present, and the theme of carpe diem that is there. These two I will be explaining further. Okay, so hope you
Okay,
are
ma'am.
going through. Shall we start? Shall we close?
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, see you. Have a
Yes,
nice
ma'am.
time.
Thank you,
Bye,
ma'am.
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.